Howdy folks, Rudros here, and it is time for a brand new set review in Opus 23, The Hidden Trials. Unfortunately, Mr. Jared Eureka could not join me for this one as he is quite a busy man, but might be able to get him back in the future. So, my guest from last time, Ghoul02, has been so gracious to join me for this. Ghoul, how are you, sir?
Doing good. Very excited. I've been super looking forward to this set. Very important set, honestly. This is what the Nationals are going to be played on. Basically across the board. There's going to be a lot of materia cups on this set, so it's very impactful, and it's really exciting to finally have like the full context of what Nationals is going to look like.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I'll give you a quick, brief overview from my point of view, folks. I pretty much look at all cards from an exclusively standard competitive sense. There's probably some great stuff in here that is really good in draft and sealed limited, but I don't play any of those formats, so everything I talk about is through a standard competitive lens. What about you, Ghoul?
I do a little bit more draft and limited play. I'll kind of mention if something is crazy and limited, but for the most part, I really do just focus on standard play. It's what, I mean, I know that like Japan is really big on L3 and L6. They're just not played here, so I can't give context because I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, that's fair. You ready to jump right into it?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Strike a match and bring back those knights, because we are starting off with Garland. He has our first card for the set. And yeah, so I've never been a huge fan of like offensive backups because I feel like they kind of conflict with, well, I want to get my backups out early so that they can start generating CP. But if I want them for an effect like this where they kind of have an offensive effect, then I kind of want to time when I put them down. He is a knight, but I can't really see you ever playing this over the forward Garland, even though it is technically a target off of Corella. Maybe there's some other use where you don't care about that and you're just happy to get a 2 CP backup down, but like he's fine, but I'm just not really sure where you're going to use this card.
Actually, I really like this card, even in Knights, to be quite honest. So first things first, Gawain can search this guy. Gawain does not search backup or forward Knights, he searches any Knight.
True.
You could search for Gawain, you could search Steiner and Garland and then just play a Garland, which is, I don't know if it's the best thing you can do, but it's interesting at least. The other thing is that, like, I said this towards the end of last set. I had like a little mini set, post review, and I talked about Corella, and I said one of the frustrating things about Corella is there were no knight backups in the set.
True.
So the only knight backups that existed were like from Opus 6. So the only thing she could do was play forwards and be a stompy aggro card. This allows her to potentially be a mid-range card. Maybe now you can play Garland. And now Ramza only needs, because Ramza can dull backup knights for his ability too. You don't have to have forward knights for Ramza. So now maybe the deck can play mid-range and it can have a Garland in the backups and you only need 3 knights for Ramza to do his thing. I'm actually really happy this card was printed. I just wish it was one set sooner, to be quite honest. Like,
yeah. I wish it had a different name. It's just, I feel like Garland, the name conflicts with it too much is my biggest hang up with it.
I mean, you would think that. I also kind of just think that the Garland forward, like, it's a good burst, but, like, it's, like, the weaker of the 4-drops in the deck. Like, you would rather hit Gawain, because Gawain draws you 2 cards. Garland only draws you the... It's, like, nice if your opponent also is on Knights, so you can pop their Laswell with it, potentially, but I really think the name Garland is shockingly expendable for a backup if you wanted to.
All right. So, moving on to our first legend of the set, wasting no time. This is Caius. Very interesting thing about not only his full art, but a couple of these other full arts. The art is actually slightly different. I didn't notice that till I was going over these, but the clocks that appear on the full art version are not actually on the normal version of the card. And I think this is true for Noel and maybe Sarah as well. So that's kind of nice. They did a little time thing there. As for the card itself, this is probably the best Caius we have, which isn't really saying much because the other Caiuses, none of them were great. However, getting any card named Bahamut, including the forward, not that anyone sees that, is very good. A 5 cost reduction is very good. I think of Amano's recent Bahamut that does like 10k, can't be reduced, RFGs. That's very, very strong. I'm not a big fan of the like recursion effect on death. I know Steve D seemed to be kind of big on it on his little ramble about it, but just like 3 cards, that's a lot, man. Like I'd rather it say pay 6 CP because at least then I could use some of my backups. Whereas this is pure cards from hand. And he comes in dull. If I'm paying 6, come on, let me have him come in active. I get it. I know he goes and gets a card named Bahamut, so he's a cool card. I really like it. I think it's the best Caius we've had in a while. I don't necessarily know where he goes. Maybe you just jam him into Warriors, because obviously he does have some kind of a deck building cost you have to put Bahamut's in so he has them to use. So that's kind of my only real thing with him, is I'm not quite sure where he goes, but I do like this card quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I think that I still have a soft spot for the like Opus 10 hero. Caius played a character, and then if he died, you had to sacrifice a character. I think the downside for that card was actually like way overstated, given like how many cards that would kill him would either like not put him into the break zone, so you wouldn't have to sacrifice the thing. Even stuff like Bahammuting him, half the Bahamuts would remove him from the game anyway. So it's like, okay, cool. I will not have to sack a character because he never went to the break zone to begin with. I mean, this card's clearly better than that, which is what matters. So playing Bahamut's is not that much of a cost. I think most of Fire's good summons, not named Amaterasu, are Bahamut. And then I think the ability to get a second forward if you're against a deck that you have to beat face in, you could go Caius into Bahamut for turn 1 for 6 CP is not bad at all. Bahamut does kind of create a threat. I think the action ability is expensive, but it does kind of create an awkward situation for your opponent. Caius has break. So let's say that you have this big 9K, your opponent swings with, I don't know, let's call it Gorilla. And you block with this. Now you trade with the Gorilla, but the Caius then dies. You can then discard 3, search the Bahamut, and then immediately cast the Bahamut reduced by 5, so you can kill something else if you wanted to. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's enough, and I think that action ability is. I will say that if you get Mist Dragon after discarding the 3 cards, or even Amaterasu, you're going to feel horrible. Because it's a when you do so you can even Amaterasu after they discard the 3 cards. So I think there's a lot of fear with that. But I do think the baseline of 5 CP, search a kill spell, use the kill spell immediately is pretty decent, and you have this weird upside of maybe if I have to, I can ditch 3 cards to kill something and replay this guy to the field.
Yeah. Fair. Moving on to Kane. I don't have a whole lot to say about this card. It's a Kane without an inherent downside, which is, I guess, kind of different. Maybe if Dragoons are ever pushed into a heavy fire direction. But if he's just kind of a stompy guy. I do like that he's basically a 9K first strike, although he can, oddly enough, be Amaterasu'd when he attempts to attack. But yeah, I'd be surprised if this saw any competitive play.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a limited all-star, I think, but not much else.
Next, we have a card I was certainly excited to see. This is Kefka. We did get some Final Fantasy VI love, and as Ghoul and I did very well at the Winter Cup this year with me on Final Fantasy VI, I, of course, am always interested in any Final Fantasy VI cards. Kefka, he's never really had a card that's fit in there, and I don't think this one really changes a whole lot. I love it on damage 5. If his damage 5 was his natural text, I'd really be into this card. But his normal pre-damage 5 of just 4K on attack, okay, it's fine. I mean, again, it's kind of neat just because that deck has never really had a Kefka, but yeah, and you can't even shoot your own stuff, so he doesn't really fit in Magissa either. I mean, you can still bring him out off Magissa, but he can't ping her himself, which is kind of nuts. So he's fine. I mean, I'm sure I'll try him in that deck just because he's a Fire 6 card and he is good on damage 5, but I'm not overwhelmed by it. Great art, though. Love the art.
I kind of have done a little bit of a 180 on this card, actually. I think this card's shockingly decent.
Do tell.
So, I mean, granted, I think it's only good in that 6 deck. But, first I was like, okay, well, 4K really doesn't do much. But we've always talked, what's the issue with FF6? It can't round up damage.
True.
Well, what did I say was a huge deal for FF6 last set? Zac. So now you have the ability to do 7K with a different forward and a different name, and a name that's never been in the deck before. I think that's actually just shockingly relevant. I think that damage 5, this is an absurd card on damage 5.
Yeah.
Attack, ping for 8K. If they don't have a blocker, they take 2 damage. Holy cow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was even thinking about this more. Dataluma's category 6.
True.
There's a 2 CP forward in Fire that's category 6 that deals you a point of damage on entry. You can kind of self-damage a little bit and get yourself up there if your opponent is trying to do that. So this, I think this does a lot of little things that deck actually wants. I'm, shocked. The more... I remember reading it, I was like, oh, it's, fine. I don't know if it's, going to replace the Warring Triad one, that you ran as a one-of to, deal with 9Ks, at a really slow pace. But... I mean, and even more so than that, if you need the 4K ping, FS6 has Interceptor. You can give this guy haste if you need to.
That's true.
Like, sure, okay, I don't think I'm excited to play a 5 CP haster that does 4K ping. I am relatively okay with a 3 CP haster that does a 4K ping on attack in a deck that desperately needs it. He just kind of fits a lot of bubbles that FF6 kind of needed and maybe didn't realize. I think that, like, maybe with the water cards you don't have room for this, but if you're on just like Fire Ice FF6, there are not 50 better Fire Ice FF6 cards than this.
Yeah. It's a fair point. He doesn't name clash either, which is nice, whereas a lot of the 6 stuff tends to name clash. No, very good. So next we have my spoiler. This is Golbez, and I'm basically going to echo what I said about the card in my video. Actually, a tiny little mini review in my video skit that I did, which is that it has a lot of effects, all of which are good. Like, the text of the effects are all very good, but they're all slow and overcosted. This is a 5 cost that does nothing the turn you play it, and has to sit there a whole turn and survive. Obviously, if you can give it haste. I was surprised how many people started brewing with this card when they saw it, because yeah, there's some neat synergies if you run Go-Go and Go-Go copies, especially the Cleave, the just dull 5k. If you can reactivate him to get him to do it again, people have talked about, category 4 package with Rosa and Sage. So it made me happy to see so many people like brew ideas with him. I still don't think you're going to see this competitive, because I just don't think you can pay 5 CP for a card that does nothing to turn you play it. However, and this is probably the one time I'll mention draft, this has got to be one of the best draft cards ever printed, because he is a beater. What do you think, Ghoul?
Yeah, I mean, this thing is absurd in draft. I mean, every single mode on this card matters for draft. I don't think it's going to see a lot of competitive success. I do think that, like, fire is maybe the one element that can get away with this, because things like the Goblin package, for instance, is so strong and so good in general.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the Goblin package kind of discounts this by 1 and gives him haste, and all of a sudden you have a 3 CP forward that can do all these effects. I don't know that I'm mixing Goblins with Rosa and Sage to, like, continuously activate and reactivate this guy, but you can do worse. In limited, this card is absurd, though. Oh my goodness. This card basically says, I hope you have removal where you lose the game.
Yeah, he's a beast there.
And he's a rare. Like, you're going to see probably 1 or 2 of these in most pre-release kits. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to hog all the spotlight with my spoiler, so why don't we turn it over to your spoiler? This is Soul Cage.
Yeah, what are the chances of that being back-to-back?
Right, yeah, that is very funny. So this is kind of a new line of monsters where in order to become forwards, you have to have 2 monsters or more. Obviously, I know you've given a lot of thoughts on this already. The body is very good. 9k for 2 cost is excellent. And then it has another effect that when it dies, you get to essentially add a monster back to hand. So it's very strong. There's really the only real downside to this card that I see, which is a downside of all these monsters in this cycle, is that to me, one of the best parts of monsters is that they are normally untargetable. You know, forwards like Atomos, Tros, Blue Worm, they become targetable or forwards when you choose them to be. So having something that's kind of always a forward means it's now more susceptible to forward removal, Shantoto, Shinryu, etc. So will that be enough to deter the strength of these? I don't know, because they all have very good effects, but that's my one worry for them. But otherwise, this is very good for what it does.
Yeah, I mean, I said a little bit about it in the video. I mean, I can't believe it's a 2 CP 9k with upside. Like, even as a forward body, like, this would be absurd, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, finding a second monster. Oh, no, I need to find a second monster to play this with. There's no playable monsters in any element, you know? Like, it's just a big body for almost no reason, it feels like. And there is some fun stuff you can do if, like, your only monster is, like, Soul Cage plus a bunch of goblins. You can theoretically, like, sack the goblins off and make them untargetable if you needed to. Like, I don't think that's super realistic. It could come up maybe 1 game out of every 10, you know, or 20. But I mean, the card is just clear. I mean, even if they do remove it, you know, outside of Shantoto, cool. I will get back a goblin from my break zone or a blue worm that died previously. Like, that's absurd. So good.
Yeah. Well, next we have the reprint of the crystal backups. I know we're not going to touch on them past this one. I just wish they would make new versions of these. Like, if you're, why keep reprinting these for was this the 3rd time now? Like, just make a new standard unit that makes a crystal. It has an ability to break itself. Like, I just don't understand why they keep reprinting these over. And like, there's somebody on the team who loves the crystal mechanic because they will just not let that die. Go ahead.
I think it's the opposite. They don't like the crystal mechanic. I feel like if they liked the crystal mechanic, they would be trying to shove like more crystal gen creators in, and it's like they're afraid of being able to run 15 backups that make crystals in your deck or something. I don't know. I don't hate that these cards exist. They're fine. Like, we know what these cards do, but like, give me something new to brew with. Like, it just feels like a waste of a, like, I know they're like, oh, we need these in L3 or L6. No, you don't. Print new ones.
Yeah, just make new ones.
Like, find some, one CP backup, make a crystal entry, like an evoker that makes a crystal. How interesting would that be? Now I have, maybe, the juices can flow then. There's nothing new with this. Just find something new to do rather than reprint these same ones.
Yeah.
We don't reprint like Shantoto every 3 sets because she's the most important card on Earth.
Yeah.
Why does this happen, right?
It's a good comparison. I like that. Yeah. Now, what also is something that must always happen is Mr. Zidane here must always have a good card. This one is no exception. Sure, the body's tiny, but he's basically Gawain for Category 9. He just replaces himself, gets 2 forwards. The only thing holding this card back, I say with air quotes, is 1, it's called Zidane, so of course there are other good Zidanes and Firewind, etc. that you can run. 2, there's not at least currently like a knockout standout. Oh my god, it can go get these targets. I think you mentioned in your little stream that Black Waltzes is a pretty good place for it. Those are fire. They tend to not run any of the other Zidanes. You can just go get Black Waltz 3 and Vivi. Now you've got your little loop combo. That's probably the most prominent one. If you're running some big multicolor version, maybe you go and get Garnet and, I don't know, an Ico or something like that. So clearly a good card, can only get stronger with time as they print more Category 9 stuff. So yeah. What else do you expect from a Zidane card at this point? Of course it's going to be good.
Yeah, no, it's very solid.
Next we have, oh boy, did I get excited when I saw this. I've complained for years, man, Zorn and Thorn don't even have a card. I can hear Gestures of the Moon playing in the background. I used to practice that song on piano, very difficult. Great mono art, Zorn and Thorn. I love that they're both on this single card. This is interesting. It's kind of odd. You also have to, you clearly want to play it for monsters, right? Because like the entry on attack is fine, but in my head, at least when I read this, I saw them as like, who cares if it's 5k, you swing in with them, they die, maybe hopefully trade with something, go get a Tomos, slap it onto the field, or Tros, or whatever your monster of choice is. So yeah, they're cool. Are they worth playing in a monster deck? Maybe it's good early aggression that, hey, for a single card you can slap them out and either you're going to poke them for damage or now I just go get that monster for free. I don't know if they'll go in a monster deck, so you tell me.
I mean, they're definitely solid. I will say I love kind of the lore of when they die, they turn into Melted Gemini.
Yeah,
that's like
that's cool.
The intended thing. I always love when they like say, well, here's the intended lore, but we'll like give you the ability to like do something more fun with it or more usable, because Melted Gemini obviously is not a very strong card. As far as the actual card goes, I mean, assuming it dies and goes from the field to the break zone, which is the only question I have on this, you basically have instead played any 2CP monster from your deck when it dies. Then you even have the ability to crash it if you wanted to, right? Like, say you're in mono fire but you want access to its homos, you can play this, wait a turn, crash it into any forward on their side of the field that they have to block with. Doesn't matter if you win or lose that exchange, you now have your Tomos on the field. And you don't have to have the right color for the monster. Any monster works. That's interesting. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's enough. The forward must block text is kind of strange. If you don't want to have to crash this guy, well, you can't not choose a forward to block. It's a very fun card, very cool lore. I think there's a lot of like interesting use cases for it. I just don't know how useful forcing your opponent to block is versus just playing Realm and getting the 2-cost monster out of your deck that way.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Unless you have an objection, this is the only one of these I'm going to touch on. Every color got one of these soldier candidates, and it's just kind of your typical standard unit fodder. They get better with more of these. Probably decent in draft, but like these aren't going to see competitive play.
I mean, the closest one to playable, the Earth one, forces a fight on entry. If there ever is a standard unit deck, a 2CP 8k that forces a fight on entry is pretty decent.
Yeah.
But if they said standard units, they would be pretty decent, I think. Like, you could play standard unit backup and then, like, whatever one of these you wanted. But because it's only forwards, I really don't... There's just so few playable standard unit forwards in the game.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to another legend, and this is Terra. Oh boy. So this is going to be interesting to see how... Because I think we have different opinions on this. So... biases are a real thing, and when I first saw this, I was insanely let down because my natural 6 biases kicked in, and I said, oh my gosh, gorgeous mono art. Wait, It doesn't fit in the 6 deck because that deck doesn't run any summons. Ugh, why do they always make Terra have to deal with summons? Ugh, it only has 5,000 power. Ugh, why is it so similar to Opus 10 Terra? Like an EX burst that gets a summon back. Like, so I was not happy with this card at all. Since then, I've tried to look at it and evaluate it, and the ceiling is clearly there, especially on an EX burst. It actually makes kind of a decent case for Amaterasu because you still get the reduction. So imagine you pull back Amat and now you can cast it for 1 that turn. So really make your opponent think. I do like the field effect too. So that way it's resistant to Mist Dragon. Obviously they can Kuchulain it, or they can like kill it on the stack and then still Mist Dragon before any of the recursion occurs. My only real question is, and maybe you can fill this in, what summon is, like, what is your goal for this? Because if you're doing it on your turn, usually you don't need a Mott on your turn. So, like, I don't know if Amaterasu on your turn is going to be great. A lot better in the burst scenario. So I struggle just to see where this is going to go. And the 5k power really bums me out. I would love to be wrong because I absolutely adore this art and I always want to see Category 6 stuff do well. I'm not very high on this card. Ghoul, tell me about it.
So my first read of this card, I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, well, this is just Opus 10 Terra, isn't it? I mean, okay, sure, she gets the cost reduction. Oh, she gets it when she dies, too! That's interesting. And I kind of slowly, over time, more and more, I went from, this card seems okay, might see some play, to I think this card is transformatively good and a 3 of in almost every deck that wants to play her. I think there is so much text on this card that's like kind of hidden. You can't Amaterasu her. I mean, you can, but okay, you killed my Terra. Terra effect when she goes to the field of the break zone. I would like to add a summon to my hand, reduce the cost of my next summon by 2. Like, you know, so you can't Amaterasu her. You can't Mist Dragon her first entry without doing something else like killing her on the stack and then Mist Dragon. But at that point, you've now invested 2 cards into it if you like bring Hildred into a Mist Dragon. I think the burst is absurd on this thing. Oh my goodness. And I know, like, I mentioned this, like, well, you can get back a Kusith and Kusith for once. Like, well, couldn't you get the Kusith? Well, you can only play 3 Kusith, right? So, but, like, the upside is I get Mist Dragon back in the break, so I Mist Dragon for 1 at the end of my opponent's turn. Now I have 3 extra copies of Mist Dragon, all of which have a cost reduction. And I'm like, ooh, this is a really nice burst. And the more I'm thinking about it, I think maybe the best thing you can do in the game going forward on 5 backups is go Warrior of Light, activate all your backups, Terra for 3 backups plus discard from hand, get back Mist Dragon from the break zone, Mist Dragon, opponent's turn, they do something, Warrior of Light, ping off your Terra, get back Amaterasu.
Yeah.
The fact she's a 5k is almost an upside in that situation. Because I mean, like, I used to do this all the time when I played Rydia, where you would have, like, the 2CP Porum that when she died, you would get back someone from the break zone and cast it.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you the amount of times I had Ursula throw her dad into that Porum to get back Amaterasu. It was like a regular occurrence. It's like, okay, Porum, I'm sorry. I need this Amaterasu or I'm going to die. She kind of does that same thing. Except on a, you know, with an even crazier burst, and like I would want to cast this card more, and she does something on entry. I think this card is absurd.
Well, I guess only time will tell, and I hope you're right, because I'd love to see it succeed. Unlike this next card, which I have absolutely no faith in, this is Tifa. Again, this is one of these kind of crystal cards. I'm not high on the whole crystal mechanic in general, so you'll probably hear me poo-pooing on most of these crystal cards, and this one is certainly no different. It just feels like fodder. I have nothing to say about it.
I mean, it's limited fodder. It's not meant to do anything.
All right, get out of here, Tifa. Next, we have Morrow. This fits in similar with Garland that... I mean, it's fine. Like, you know, you can play it early for just a cheap backup just to help yourself curve out. It's obviously very good on damage 5 that it shoots for 9k. I don't know realistically how often that's ever going to come up. And if it's never going to come up, I wonder if you're better off playing the 1-cost standard unit cards that kind of like let you scry your hand if you draw extras of them. So he's fine, but I don't know. I just like, if I look at him as blank text, I feel like I'd rather play the standard units. I just can't see the damage 5 coming up that frequently.
I mean, there's a lot of nice things. Fire likes to break their own backups now a lot. Like, a lot. So, like, if you have this in your deck, and even if you go to 5 backups early, there's a decent chance that, like, when you're on damage 5, you can clear a backup slot for this guy. The floor on him is a 1 CP backup. That's a pretty low floor. You know, like I guess high floor, like whatever the term is.
Yeah.
Like at worst, it's like a card that is doing what you need to do in the early game anyway. And the upside is maybe you draw him late and nuke something off the face of the planet for 1 CP.
Yeah.
He's not an all-star, but he could see play.
Now you know what I hope sees play, and this is Nalapa. If this card is bad, I guess I've lost all faith in Final Fantasy because it reads absurd. So that goes in the category 6 deck. It goes in kind of any fire deck. It's just a 2 CP. Like it made me think of the Fiend, but it's half the price of the Fiend, right? And in a way, it's kind of Amaterasu proof because they can technically, like, you cast Kuchulain to blanket, so it triggers. So you can cast Amaterasu to cancel the trigger, which triggers it again because you cast Amaterasu, which is really funny. And just the effects just read absurd. 10k to any floor. I mean, that kills Warrior of Light. Like, there is nothing currently in the game other than, like, Rydia that's going to survive that. And deals them a point of damage, and you can do both. I was like baffled that you got to do both. I thought, well, no, you got to like pick which one you want. No, you could do both. Like, if this card isn't great, I'm just gonna be shocked because it reads absolutely absurd. I hope this isn't another case like Gutsco, because everyone thought Gutsco was beyond broken in Opus 14. Then it turned out, actually in practice he was just fine. So, man, I got high hopes for this card. I remember fighting this character in 6 a lot, so I'm happy to see a new character get a card. What do you think?
I mean, it's clearly very good. I also like the mental image of like the mono win player, like Chocobo, ow, Lulu, Chocobo, Lulu, ow, like, it's just like absolutely like demolishing themselves to one of these on field is like really funny to think about. I do. Like, there's a couple of, like, questions, and I think that they'll probably, like, end up being answered. I don't know, like, how many of this can you actually theoretically run in a deck? Like, can you run 3 of this in a deck?
Mm-hmm.
When, like, you could draw this, and you look at your opponent, and they're playing FF6, and it's like, cool, I have 3 cards that don't do anything.
Yeah.
I think that... But, like, it is a really interesting and powerful floodgate, for sure. Like, the 10k, I also... do think this is the best Chaos Arc answer not named Chocobo.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I thought that too. Like, if they play Chaos and then try to Arc on the stack, it goes, okay, but kill Chaos and I'll go ahead and hit you as well.
Oh, no, even more than that. That choose a forward does not have to choose your opponent's forward.
True.
You could shoot your own targeted card that got hit with the Arc, and the Arc now says, break the forward, you don't discard 2 cards.
Yeah.
Which is, like, that's not nothing. Like, that's a big deal. Oh, also, I take a point of damage. It turns it into, like, the Bahamut summon, basically. You know, I think there's, like, a lot of potential play for that as well. I could see Knights adopting this as, like, a anti-Chaos Arc card for sure. It's also absurd in the 6 deck as a 2 CP forward. It basically becomes a cantrip with lock on field, which is crazy. Very, very strong card for sure. Like I said, the biggest question, it's got a couple of lingering questions, but I don't think enough of them to not see play.
I got high hopes for it. Come on, Nalapa. Next, we have Natsugo. Are you scared? Because we got a spook. The only real situation I kind of like this in is with itself, because you're essentially paying 2 to shoot something for 9. Other than that, unless there's, I mean, I don't know all the monsters. I'm sure there's some monsters that benefit from going to the break zone, or maybe ones like the water one we'll get to later, or ones that like Proto-Florian, they have an entry effect. After that, they just sit there. But then you're now running those monster cards versus the monsters we all know are really strong. So like, I'll be surprised if this sees play, but 9k is a lot of damage at least.
Yeah, I mean, like, there are stuff like Cleo, and like when it goes from the field to the break zone, you draw a card. You have stuff like the Valfoder, that like your opponent discards a card when it goes from the field to the break zone. Trapdoor is a classic example. Field in the break zone, break it forward. Like, those are fine. You could also like animate a blue worm, attack with the blue worm, and then crack this with the blue worm.
Yeah.
It's going to die anyway for 9k. It's like fine. I think it's a little bit high investment for what it is, but I mean, it's not terrible. I mean, you know, having this little 9k ping sit on field. You could sack a Soul Cage to it if you have one in hand, get back any other monster and get a 9k ping. You know.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Next, we have Category 9 Bahamut, and holy moly, man. I was like, I don't know if I want to spend the money on the physical cards anymore. I'll just play online. And then I see all the full arts in this set, and I'm like, oh, I really want these full arts. Especially this one, Bahamut. He's always been my favorite summon in the Final Fantasy series, and he just looks like an absolute monster here. As far as the effect goes, depending on the day you ask me, I think this sounds both really strong and really weak. Like compared to the Amano Bahamut, which can be cheaper on your turn, and it gets through Rydia Protection, and it RFGs. And granted, this one RFGs 2, and that's got the Break Zone, right? So you think, well, that's like a 2-for-1. You get a card from the Break Zone and that, and just... But 5 is still a lot. I don't know what to think about this. Like, it's clearly fine, but what makes this better than any of the other Bahamuts? Do you know? Because I don't know.
I mean, it's a clearly powerful card. Like, it's really interesting. Say your opponent is on Scions, and they go, Alize, target Alfino, and you go, Bahamut. Actually, both of them are gone. Get them out of here. Or like Ishtola. Okay, nope, never mind. Both of those are gone. And it's kind of like this weird ability to maybe combine like Amaterasu with Mist Dragon for like those specific instances is clearly really strong.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a lot of decks right now that are playing really low forward counts with the expectation that I'll just Kusith them back or I'll Lena them back.
True.
I'll do. And if you get rid of all of your opponent's Refias, they're going to have a hard time killing you. So like being able to RFG a forward is like a really powerful way of dealing with them. And, like, 9,000 power hits, like, everything not named Warrior of Light. Like, it still removes Une from the game. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's
Une huge. Off the field. And not only off the field, like, one of the issues with Une sometimes is they play Une, well, they get back to their turn. Well, I'm going to get back a Kusith with Une, so you can't really get rid of the Une. She's going to come back no matter what you do. Being able to say, no, she's gone forever. Like, the Chaos Arc decks, I've seen some of them on as low as, like, 12 forwards.
Whew.
You can cast this, like, 3 times, and they'll just never have enough forwards. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's absurd with Caius as well that this becomes free.
Yeah, I like him there.
Being like delete a forward and delete something from the break zone at the same time. Like, there's a lot of potential for the card. I don't think it's better than the one that's like it's the cost reduction in your turn 10k can't be reduced. I think 13 still prefers the 13 one that like becomes 2 CP if you have 13 characters on field.
Yeah.
But this isn't far behind, and it's different utility. Fire does not have access to either of these effects normally.
Yeah.
Just a straight RFG. This doesn't have to do the damage, then RFG. So I think it's cool. A really cool card.
I hope to see play, because man, is it pretty. Next, we have Parai. This is kind of just your standard searcher, similar to Bosch. He's 2 CP, which is nice, so he's very easy to play early if you don't like drawing to your backups. I tend to like cards like that. He is also a warrior, so you could use this with the Tyvis package. I'd have to look up all the FFL cards, so I don't, again, really know what like the primary target of this is. The one that comes to mind that people have mentioned a lot is Sarah, the backup one, but I just don't know if you would have room for this in a Warrior of Light package, so I don't really see that being a thing. Granted, that does run a lot of bursts, so maybe you hit a beneficial burst as well, but yeah, this is one of those cards that like I think reads fine, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but outside of Warriors, I don't really know what's going to use it, but I also freely admit I don't know what all the FFL category cards are, so.
I mean, just 2 sets ago, one of the best decks in the game was Gigawall playing Warriors, and that deck is on Sarah FFL. Moro is also FFL if you wanted to play like another 3-drop that you could hit off of Warrior of Light that can get you some card advantage, maybe get some dead cards out of your hand. Unlike you, I don't know that Refia Control has room for a card like this, but if they did, I mean, search Sarah FFL and get me to damage 3 for Ferris or Arc, it's not bad.
True.
It's just like competing with slots with like Botch and there's just like a lot of like kind of interesting things. I don't know if any of them are enough on their own, but the whole might be better than a parts on this card.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I'm going to piggyback right on what you said there, a whole better than the parts. This is Palom. With Porum has to be some of the most adorable art we have ever gotten in Final Fantasy, especially these full art versions. Like, Man, they're making me want to just buy the toys that are on there, the cute little black mage and the little frog. There has to be something here with these cards, and they will definitely take some testing, because I don't know what the right combination is. Do you run 3 of the new Palamporum and 3 of the Opus 15 Legends, and you just mix and match to your heart's content? I know you're pretty high on the new Porum here, and then you immediately turn the Palom online, because the old Porum was kind of like always good, but the old Palom was really only good at 3 counters or more. So I think there's a lot here that will, of course, take up some slots. You're going to have to see these cards together early, but I would be surprised if these don't see play in some combination. The only thing that will keep them out is just the ever constant threat of cards like Limit Break Cloud, which really did shut down cards like Rydia last set with limit breaks, or if Ixion is very prevalent in the meta. So, but adorable art, a lot of possible combinations to think of here. I hope to see these cards at Nationals.
I think the funniest thing about this, and we joke about this every time Palom and Porum come out, the Porum is always better than the Palom.
Yeah.
And hilariously, it's true here as well, because the old Porum is such a good generic card. But if you power up Porum, she just sets the forward to 1000 power. You still need to find like any source of additional damage to actually kill them. Maybe like they can't attack anymore. But the difference between Palom on 1 experience counter and Palom on 3 is a huge difference. Like if you told me that Fire got a 4 CP forward that does 8k on a 0-cost action ability every single turn, I think that probe would be very playable, and I don't think it's hard to line that up at all. Especially in like mono Fire, you could play the Cascade backup, so you can kind of search for Porum indirectly. I think these cards are really good. I think they're really cool. The best, genuinely some of the best art in the game. Like, oh my god,
yeah.
I cannot believe how cute these are. But like the Porum is maybe my most wanted full art in this set, beyond like Refia and Rydia, the legacies, but. No, these cards are really good. It's funny that they're like relatively simple too. Like they don't do that much outside of it.
Yeah.
Maybe the Palom was a 2k boost, but just like the way they interact with the Opus 15 Legends, and it's such perfect legacy support. I wish they did that more often. They kind of put these cards that were kind of falling out of favor a little bit and struggling, and said, what if we could just skip 2 turns with these? Or skip a turn basically. But you get a slightly lower impact, partner for them. And honestly, I think that's good enough. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Just the way it accelerates that. So,
I would love
awesome
to see
card.
more support like that. Well said, well said. Well, let's wrap up Fire with Monk. This is a series of backups we're going to get, so we'll mainly touch on them here, and we'll maybe touch on them one by one as we go through them. Ironically enough, this is the best one by far, and it's the best one strictly because of Magissa, because it's a standard unit that can ping Magissa, which means you can run 3 of it if you really want to. It's just so funny to me. Like, I don't think this was intended for that. This was clearly intent to like beat up your opponent. Instead, it's like, nah, let's just use this to ping our Magissa, which I won't lie, kind of bums me out. When you and I did our ban video, we said Magissa's a card we'd like to see banned, and I still feel that way. Like watching it at the Texas Materia Cup, just vomit like 4/6 forwards out onto the field in one turn. Like, I just don't enjoy that style of gameplay, so it bums me out that this Monk is good for that deck, but yeah, this Monk's good for that deck.
And that'll be no shade to Hunter. Hunter is incredible with that deck. There's a reason he
absolutely
does so well with it. But yeah, I mean, it is very funny that it immediately power creates a Palom.
Yeah.
It's like they're like right next to each other in it. I like the design idea behind these backups as like alternate, I call these like the slow backups. They have like the backups like 2 sets ago that are like, if you have 3 or less backups, you get the draw.
Mm-hmm.
These all like do something, and if it's your 5th backup, you get a bonus. I don't think the 5th backup bonus on these is nearly powerful enough to really use these, and the entry effects on most of them is not good enough to be worth the slot in general.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, this is kind of decent with Ursula as well. Like, you could Ursula this back, do 4k, throw it with Ursula to do another 5. Like, it's not bad. I don't think it's amazing or anything, but, Monks are also a deck that can modulate their backups pretty well. Maybe they go to 5 with one of these, do 8k, throw it with Ursula, play another one for another 8. So,
yeah. Well,
not like a broken card, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's cool off with Ice. This is the Ice version of the same thing. I pretty much just everything Ghoul said. Like, cute idea. This isn't going to see competitive play.
I think this one could still. It's a 3-cost Ice card. Gigawall could very easily like to see this. Gigawall can accidentally ramp backup sometimes, so you could theoretically get the second effect, but like a 3 CP standard unit backup that makes your opponent discard is kind of like what they do with the Scholar, except instead of draw, they make your opponent discard.
That's a good point.
This is theoretically playable.
I'll still be shocked. Just like I'll be shocked if we see this Vice. For being a crystal card, this is actually, I kind of like this quite a bit. Like, if it wasn't name clashing with the other Vice, I don't know. Again, I still don't like crystals, but it still works with Nero, given the way Nero is worded, so you can still get a discard on entry. And if you pay that crystal and then you search out any job Svet, you can go for some of the new ones. So, like, I still don't think this is going to see play other than limited with the whole Svets package. Again, just because the other Weiss Nero is so good. But in spite of all that, this one is surprisingly decent.
Yeah, it really is kind of unfortunate. Like, Weiss is I almost wish this was like switched with Shelk or something, where like you could have a Shelf that does this as like an alternate card for the Nero to search potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, if you go Nero Weiss, it's a 9k Brave that potentially got a search on entry if you have anything that generates crystals. And Ice hilariously generates crystals really well. It's not very good at spending them. So, I mean, there are Fate's backups as well. This can search Nero if you didn't have it already. Like, it's hard to say that like a 4 CP EX first backup that searches a 3 CP forward that can also search is bad. It's just, Weiss is such a house of the card.
Yeah. Next we have Amo. This is our girl from the future, and this is a cool ability. It is really cool. I'm not sold on the utility of it. Maybe if it's like, okay, I've got the lethal push set up, the only thing they can do is if they can cast something from hand to stop me, and Amo just says, surprise, actually, now you have no hand. Although, if they had something to stop you, probably they'll then just do it in response to the Amo. Maybe not. Maybe you'll get that very specific situation where they were like, curses, I had to wait for you to go to combat to use this effect. Like, it's a cool idea. Maybe you'll run it as a one of or so just in case the opportunity comes up, but I'd be surprised if this saw much play.
I mean, it's interesting at the bare minimum. 2 CP Ice backup, if there is a deck that wants it, that's like, this is the right place to be because Emina exists. Making Physalis have all of her text is cool. I don't know if it's worth cracking a backup for that alone. The probably the best spot for this is the Squall from Opus 16, the one that, like, if you both players have no cards in hand, like double attack and do 4k ping every time it attacks and or is blocked with first strike. That's like pretty powerful. Like, if you wanted to go for that, like, as a way to close the game, and you also know they can't Amaterasu that or anything like that. You can do this before any other situation comes up. It's like, it's interesting. It's powerful, but it's also like not immediately apparent what wants the effect, I guess is the best way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, kind of going in with that theme, here we have Anima, Icon of Icons. It's the Category 14 version, Primal. Man, I wish this was full art, because I absolutely love this art. And I just when I saw it, I read it, I was like, why? Why? Like, I have been begging and asking for a Legend Ice card that just says when it enters the field, dull freeze your opponent's entire board. Well, we kind of got that, except it has the condition that both players, you and them, have to have no hand. Like, why? Like, I understand, okay, well, it knocked everything out, and okay, they draw 2, but guess what? There's this thing called Limit Break now that says, well, I can still play. Or, oh, the way's clear, I'm going to attack. Oops, I hit 2 EX bursts, so it didn't matter. Or, I don't know, one of the most prominent decks in the game right now is called Refia and says, yeah, that's great. Okay, I'm going to stand them all back up, and after I've spun it on your turn, by the way, and send him packing, and I'll just stand them all back up on my turn. So, like, I just want the card. No, you can't put a bunch of conditions on it, and we'll see that with an Ice Legend coming up. Like, when you tack all these conditions on, they just make these cards unplayable. I love the art. Anima deserves good cards, but it's just too conditional. Like, I don't want to kill my own. The whole point of it is I control your hand, not kill my own hand. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm actually the opposite. I think this card is absurd.
You're crazy. Tell me about it.
I think this is like one of the best cards Ice has ever gotten.
Nah, go ahead.
Like, there is an ice aggro deck that in order to combat it, you have to go to no cards a lot of the time. Like, that's what you do. This now allows an ice aggro deck to skip your turn and punch you in the face 3 more times. That is so ridiculous. A lot of the counterplay to what ice discard does is, what do? I'll go to 0 hands and hope they don't have Thessalis. This kills you into the sun for doing that. But if you don't go to no cards in hand, they're going to go narrow whites and they're going to dull freeze all your stuff. This card is absurd. I am actually, like, terrified of this card. Because I think this card is just going to end games out of, like, not even out of nowhere. And, like, no cards in your hand is annoying, but you can control that. You can just, okay, I'll cast a Surges with a backup on this card in the hand and then dump the rest of my hand for Anima. Now they're taking 2 points of damage from just those, not including if you had, like, a Laswell or something hanging out on field. God forbid you did anything prior to playing this card. This card is one of the most terrifying cards they've ever printed, which I guess fits the art and the lore.
You should be scared of Anima.
I think this card is like a 2 or 3 of in every ice aggro deck. I mean, we talked about, like, you played like that Hien the one time and you hated it, but like I told you, like, it skipped my turn when you did that.
Yeah. This
completely skips the turn, and not only that, it knocks out the blockers too.
Yeah.
You can't block unless you have Refia, but if your opponent has Refia and 3 Warrior Light backups and you're playing ice aggro anyway, you've already. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're going Rufus Ruggagene, I just don't see how you're going to be able to afford this because you've already dumped your whole hand for that stuff. Like,
I mean, the ice aggro deck right now doesn't play Rufus Ruggagene. It goes like Lufenian, Laswell, and then okay, here's another like 2 CP discarder in what's his name, little FFT guy, Argath. Okay, well now here's a Noctis. We're gonna start party attacking and draw cards back while you're dealing with this like aggro board. Okay, well now here's another red mage that's gonna party attack and dull freeze and also dull freeze on entry. Like that's what the ice aggro deck is doing. And the way you combat that deck, even in Refia, is you discard your entire hand, play 3 backups, and say, I will simply draw Refia like a god. This card says, no, you don't get to just discard your whole hand, play your backups out, and try to play off your backups. You're dead.
I hope you're right. I would love to see it succeed, because I don't see it.
This is the scariest card in the entire set. I think that I will grow to hate this card by the end of the set, I promise you.
That I do believe. All right. What about this next one? This is our summon. This is Shiva. EX Burst. Always grateful to have one of those on a summon. The rate for just 2 to dull freeze a single forward is not very good, especially when it's not attached to a body. It does have this alternate effect, too, with damage, which I don't really know how you're supposed to use this. Like, if you're trying to prevent yourself from taking damage, wouldn't you dull freeze the attacker before it attacks in combat anyway? So it almost encourages you to like dull freeze it after it's attacked, which maybe is good if it's like Warrior of Light specifically because he's brave, and so then you can. But beyond him, like I don't know, that just seems kind of weird. Like, you can't even use it with the Cecil. At first I was like, oh, you could use it on your Cecil so you don't hit yourself for damage, but then it means that it doesn't hit them for any damage. Like, so I don't know.
No, it'll still do damage.
No, because it says if it deals damage to a forward or player, it will become 0. So it means he won't do 10k to them.
Oh, he won't do the cleave, you're right.
Yeah, so it just won't do... Otherwise, that would have been a neat little synergy, is that, like, hey, you can use it to protect the damage and he still cleaves. So, like, I don't know. I'm not really sure where this one goes other than in, like, the Oops All Shivas deck.
I mean, in the Oops All Shivas, the 15 to 18 Shiva deck, this is an immediate 3 of.
Yeah.
But I think that second text, I think, like, the damage to a player is, like, it's a bonus. Like, maybe you get this, like, a little late or something, or you want your opponent to feel okay. Maybe you have a blocker or something. You know, you animate an Echidna, and you block with it, and now it doesn't take the damage from that or something. But, oh no, they got the thing out of the way, well, I still don't take the damage, so who cares?
Yeah.
Right? Or, like, maybe you need something that, like, to see your opponent attack. I don't know if there's a card that does that. But, like, I'm going to go, like, Battle Fade it with or Fog it. The biggest thing, though, is if it deals damage to a forward or player, or to a forward. You could target a Ferris with this. Now the Ferris does no cleave or ping whatsoever.
True, that's a good use.
Your opponent goes for a Cyan for a board wipe. They spend the 5 crystals, dull freeze a Cyan, doesn't do any damage. They go for you're in an ice aggro deck and your opponent is on Mana Earth. They go Genova Synthesis, 8k your field. 2CP? No, he didn't.
No, he didn't. I like that.
You know, like I think that's the real utility for the card is like the burst is here to like give it something to do if it is a burst, but really this is a 2CP cancel for anything that does damage, and there's a lot of that in the game. Your opponent goes, Edgar targets Sabin. Okay, well Sabin is now dull frozen and can't do damage this turn. There's just a lot of situations where that matters and is relevant and it's really powerful. So I think the C's, like we said, it's a 3-of in the Shiva deck. It might see some play in any kind of ice aggro deck as like a 2CP Amaterasu, like for anything that is like a damage-based board like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how prominent that really is, considering like I think Shantoto is a big issue. Maybe Shantoto isn't actually that scary for ice because they make you discard your hand anyway. And you're never paying 7 against that deck.
Yeah.
So, no, I think this card seems very solid.
Well, you made a good case for it, so we will find out. Here we have Shulk. This is just more Crystal Svets. I don't really have anything to say about this. This is kind of fodder to me.
I mean, all of these cards that do this, where it's like on entry, gain a crystal, or like when me or my friend enters the field, I gain a crystal. We have a Warrior Blight that does this for Mysidia. There's the Cecil that does this for Category 4. All these cards are pretty decent. You know, and she has some, like, you can attack with her with a crystal, and your opponent, she's Schrodinger's 8K. Is she 8K? Well, you know. Ursula was really good, annoying about that in Limited, the one that, like, gain a crystal on entry, pay a crystal, she gains, like, Brave, or she gains, like, 3,000 power
3K, yeah.
spend on her. Like, same kind of situation there. Like, this is a card that's really good. I mean, the biggest problem is, like, the Opus, like, 2 Shulk is still shockingly a good card.
Yeah.
You know, if there is, like, Svate support to, like, search for, like, the Weiss, if you can generate the crystal without this Shulk, maybe you want to play the old Shulk and, like, cheat in as a Dane, make them discard and fry a little bit. But, no, I mean, these cards are all decent. The cards that do this. I think the rest of the Svates package is what's going to really, like, is it actually worth doing this?
It makes me happy that you were able to get more out of that than I was, because I was very dismissive of it. Speaking of being dismissive of it, this is Jegrin, that if this didn't have Job Knight, I wouldn't have even given this card a second glance. I think it's that bad. However, it is a Job Knight, and it's in the right color. It's ice. Cards that their only benefit is when they die and go to the break zone have very much fallen out of favor, like for sets and sets now. And kind of the issue too, I just don't know if I even like them in Knights, because you're still paying for something that does nothing up front. And usually if you're doing the big Knights board, they tend to die in one of two ways. Either they get Shantoto'd, which nullifies his effect anyway, or you're getting Shinryu'd, which won't be dull, so you can't break it. And usually they have to spend their hand to Shinryu anyway, so they probably don't have a hand. So like, I don't know. I mean, he's a knight, so, and you know, knights are strong and more knight support, and he's a name that isn't currently there, but are you really going to want to slot this in that deck? Or is there some other deck maybe you see it in? Because other than knights, I don't see why this guy's even worth looking at.
Yeah, I mean, he's a common, so, I mean, there's only so much you can expect from these sometimes. It is like, one thing knights can struggle with is to make use of Beatrix on field.
Mm-hmm.
This on a 2CP forward is actually pretty absurd. Now, am I willing to play 3 of this? No, but like, I could see myself like playing 1 and like not feeling too bad about it. You know, maybe I get it back with a Garland and then like Beatrix it in. Sure. So, I don't expect to see like more than like a 1-of in a Knight's deck.
Yeah. Next, we have Jill Nabat, who absolutely loves this pose. I'll have to play 13 again. I don't remember her doing this all the time. To my knowledge, there's just not like a ton of Psycom support, so maybe this will get stronger in the future. Even if there was, though, I was trying to think about, like, let's say there's some like Goomba-type Psycon standard unit soldier that, like, when he dies, you like go fetch out another one. Even then, do I want to pay 3 over and over again that has to be 2 ice to specifically break a dull forward? Maybe if there's some Psycom that benefits from like going to the break zone and the recycles itself. But as of right now, I just don't really see what you'd do with this.
Yeah, I mean, Rigdia is like a decent lightning backup. So like you could theoretically, if you're playing Ice Lightning, you could run this Jill plus that Rigdia and get 2 pops with this Jill. It's cute. I mean, really what it says is pay 2 ice, tap, sacker to break a dull forward. But like, we'll do it slightly more flavorfully. Maybe you can get 2 uses out of it, which I think is kind of fun. You know, it makes you think a little more than just like the boring way of, well, she sacrifices herself to break it all forward.
Yeah.
So, and again, she's just a common, so.
That's fair. Okay, well, if you're tired of these commons, let me give you an ice legend. As a Final Fantasy stan and homer, especially for Yoshitaka Amano art, there's very little of his art that I haven't seen, and I somehow had missed this one, so man, is this art gorgeous. Cecil looks so imposing. He looks like the Dark Knight. I expect him to have the Batman. He looks that good. Unfortunately, then I had to read the card, and I just think this card is, to be polite, I think it's lackluster. I'd rather use another word. So he makes you discard on entry. Yeah, you can avoid that by going to nothing in hand, but you don't want to be on nothing in hand in FF. Then you have to take a point of damage just for a single dull freeze on 2 characters. Like, that just doesn't seem worth it to me for a one-time dull freeze. And then you have his special. 10k. Someone messaged me about this card and was like, hey, Ice finally got its board wipe. And I read it and I was like, well, I mean, technically you're correct, but it's terrible. So you can only use it one time. And okay, what if they jam 4 Knights out on turn 1? I go, well, don't you worry. Once I get to damage 5, then I'll stabilize. Like, if I'm dying now, I need Shantoto now. I need Shinryu now. I can't wait till damage 5 and have another copy of this. Like, yes, it's clearly very cheap. It's a single card from hand. You can use it on their turn. I get all that. And the theme is great. I love the idea. It's a Dark Knight. He takes damage and then, like, throws all that energy back at his opponents, but just... this card just ain't it, man. Like, tell me you see something here that I'm not, because I think this card is bad.
So my initial reaction, I was 100%, this card would be a bad hero. And usually the legends are pretty solid. So I've tried to, like, reevaluate, because clearly the card designer sees something, right? And, I mean, outside of if this didn't make you discard on entry, I would say it's actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think a 3 CP4 that dull freezes 2 characters is not bad. Take a point of damage, well, who cares? That's an upside in this game. I can arbitrarily put myself on damage 3 for another effect, right?
Yeah.
So, in that special, like, it's not nothing. Like, it really is, like, that is one of the strongest specials in the game.
Yeah.
So, the question is, am I willing to discard a card to play this? Would I play this as a 5 CP 9k? Probably not. I would play this as a 3 CP 9k. I don't know that I would pay... It's really close. It really is not very far off. There's some fun stuff you can do with, like, the Orin that, like, if you would take damage this turn, he takes, 8,000 damage instead.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, like, redirect it to him, and you can special over and over again. That's got to be Magical Christmas Land, though, right? Like, there's no way that's actually happening. But, like, the special has no timing restrictions. Like, there is, like, a really, like, fun potential combo you do where it's like, you play Orin, then you play this. Orin takes the point of damage for you. So you draw 2 cards at the end phase with the Orin instead. And then on your opponent's turn, you drew into the Cecil special. I'm in a Dark Flare. Oh, Orin, my buddy here, is going to block the damage. Like, that's so cool in concept. I guess I have to try it just to see, like, maybe... because, like, the Orin's not, like, a bad card. It hasn't seen any play, but it's not bad, like, objectively. It's a little annoying that, like, Orin gets, like, the cost reduction if you have multiple forwards, but, like, you can't go, like... what you would want to do then is go, like, Cecil into the Orin, but then you can't have no cards in hand for the Cecil at that point. And, like, you don't get the cost reduction in the Orin unless you already have 2 other forwards, at which point the Cecil really isn't doing very much.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some people say, like, oh, well, Gigawall can play this. And I'm like, can Gigawall play this? Like, does Gigawall want this effect? I mean, like, they want the dull freeze 2 characters, but a lot of the reason Gigawall is good is because Gigawall maintains card advantage when it goes for its big plays like this.
Yeah.
Usually you go, like, back up into Gigawall. Well, you have a card in hand. You can't go to no cards, hit the Cecil, discard a 0 card, and then draw off of a Scholar you hit.
Yeah.
So, and the 2 characters is mandatory. If your opponent doesn't have 2 characters down, you do have to dull freeze something you control. Like, they couldn't have made that choose up to, or we just we didn't have enough white ink for the card. it might play better. You know, like I said, the Aura and Cecil combo sounds really fun, but I don't think it's good enough.
Sorry, Cecil. I think this might be the only bit we're seeing you of. So, on to the true legend of the set. This is Xenos, a card that when I first read it, it's appropriate he's a Reaper. I misread it, or I didn't really fully appreciate how the effect worked, and I was insanely underwhelmed by this. I was like, okay, I'm going to remove two cards for a one-time discard. Like, no thanks on a 7K body. However, it just says when a card in your opponent's break zone leaves the break zone. So that means if they revive something, if they, let's keep in the theme of 14, if Alice goes to revive Y'shtola, they have to discard a card. If they hit an EX burst Kusith and recur something, they have to discard a card. If you use your glorious Opus 17 Edward backup to say at the end of your turn, remove that from the break zone, you now have to discard a card. I was like, holy cow, like limit breaks. It was confirmed in a ruling on Twitter that limit breaks technically hit the break zone and then leave it to go back to the limit break deck or into the ether. So that would trigger Xenos. Like, oh my goodness. Like, if this card wasn't a 7K, I would just be salivating. And I kind of am already anyway. So that's the only problem. Obviously, he can die to Amaterasu. 7K, he can die to a single Magissa free Ifrit. But like, man, oh man, does this card mess with your hand and your break zone in a way that we just really haven't seen before. So I'm super excited for Xenos, and if this doesn't see play, like I don't even know where we're at these days.
This is Weiss's best friend too now, isn't it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you go Weiss, make him discard, Dull Freeze. Xenos, make him discard again, Dull Freeze. Some other stuff that people have brought up. Kadaj with this is really funny. Like, it comes out at the end of their turn in the end phase when they can't respond. Like, rip those two out. Oh, I'm so sorry. A card must have left your break zone. You got to discard. I don't say it. Xeno says it. You know. And that happens in the end phase. There's no responding to that. They can't Amaterasu at that point. They just have to discard every single turn Kadaj enters.
Yeah.
That seems really good. Edward backup, as you mentioned. We have Emina to get the Edward backup now, so you can theoretically play an ice deck that doesn't just play 3 backups named Lufenian and nothing else. Maybe.
Dude, could you imagine this with Mist Dragon? Hey, remove all the cards from your break zone. I draw a card. Oh, and you now also discard on top of it. Like,
Irvine is another one that people have brought up.
Yeah.
The Bahamut summon this set will trigger it.
Yeah.
If you have like Caius with Bahamut now, you go, okay. Caius comes back, Bahamut, remove that, discard please. It really. I think the other thing people don't realize is how often this is going to accidentally trigger on their own stuff. Like the Kusith EX versus is going to be the funniest when someone has no cards in hand. Kusith EX, yeah, I'll take that. Xenos, please discard it. Okay, now why still freeze that? You can also do stuff with like the Ku Chaspel, where like both players get a card back from their break zone and then discard, and then this would make them discard again. No, really cool card.
Yeah, fantastic. Next we have Sarah. So like if you can get both of her effects off, a 3 CP backup, they discard a card, that's basically Edward from Opus 5, one of my favorite ice backups, and a character Dull Freeze. I think that's really good. The only issue is I looked up the commandos. I think the only other backup commando is the Snow from Opus 7, which was a great card in its time, but really hasn't seen any play since then. So all the other commandos are forwards. So, there's a couple cheap ones. So I don't know. Maybe you get a forward out and then you get the Sarah out. Because I do really like her if both effects go off, but I don't think she's worth it if just one of them goes off. Also, depending on what version of the deck you're running, there are other very good Sarahs as well, so she just kind of name clash. So like, it's a cool card, but I don't know. I don't think this one's going to see a ton of play.
I think she's another kind of okay-ish Gigawall target. I don't know if there's a commando you can play in Gigawall, but like, a 3CP backup, make sure opponent discard, maybe has a bit of extra upside, could be relevant. I think probably I would play the Red Mage from this set over this if I was going for a Gigawall that 3CP backup that forces my opponent to discard. But, she's not the worst card in the set, so, there is a theoretical home for her.
That's the Ghoul tagline. Not the worst card in the set. Congratulations, Sarah. That's the standard unit soldier. We'll go and skip past that. Next we have...
Well, the standard unit soldier will be pretty solid and limited as well, by the way.
Yeah.
2CP, just Dull Freeze forward and limited is, really good.
Yeah. Next, we have Drautos, Kingsglaive and Ice, finally. Unfortunately, this card's just kind of like this is clearly the it's over curve or however under curve, or it's over curve, like it's 2 for 8. That's above curve, so it has to have this downside. You can only cast it if your opponent has 2 cards or less in hand, which maybe works in a nice discard deck, except then he doesn't do anything. He's just a body. I can't see a place for this guy.
I'm a little higher on him, just because he's kind of an asshole. He's kind of hard to get off the field. And 2 or less cards in their hand, like, okay, sure, you can't always play him, but he always discards for 2 CP. And knowing from Shantoto how that card, I swear they printed 4 in the corner, but they never pay it. I don't think it's that hard to get them down to 2 cards in hand for this guy. Or like Ishtola pretty much always has haste, right? Like that's another example.
Yeah.
So you're telling me there's a 2 CP 8K Brave that my opponent has to outright break to get off the field? I'm kind of interested. He's a big stupid beater, but he's a really good big stupid beater.
Fair enough. Next, we have the Crystal backup. Skip past that. Then we have our monster, Pacos Amethyst. I just don't really see it with this one. If the Opus 16 Agrius that everyone was really excited about when it came out, if they target it, they've got to discard a card. Well, that card didn't end up living up to any of the expectations it had. So if that wasn't any good, I don't really see why this one would be any better, unless just the natural 8K is that much of a difference, even though it was pretty easy to get that Agrius bumped up to if you wanted to. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really see anything special with this card.
I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it's a 2 CP 8K that has kind of evasion or pseudo untargetable in a way. I mean, Agrius saw a lot of play. I think that you're kind of underselling her a bit. You know, she fell out of favor relatively quickly, but people did experiment and try to make her work, and she can be really annoying to deal with. I don't think this is as good as the other monsters in the cycle. I do think it's very funny that if you have this and Windrake on the field, they can't choose this anyway. There's a card that gives untargetable to all of your other monsters. It's like, I'm not sure I agree with that decision, but okay. It's fine. It's not broken, but if you're in ice and on monsters, you could do worse than throw 1 copy of this in your deck.
All right, fair enough. Next we have, White Tiger Lysine Nimbus, and this has got to be some of my favorite art I've ever seen in Final Fantasy. I don't know why. Any kind of character who is like summoning energy with their palm out like that, sign me up. He kind of looks like Ultron or Zenyatta. Is that the character name from Overwatch? Zenyatta, the like mystic guy.
Oh, I never played Overwatch, but yeah.
He looks so cool. I love this art, but man, this effect is pants. He dies to Amaterasu. I don't really understand the whole Brave thing. Like, all of his cards have been Brave, so I guess I need to replay Type 0 because I don't remember why that matters lore-wise. I mean, I don't know. Ability protection's okay, but he himself dies to Amat. They'll just kill him if he's that big of an issue. I mean, who are you getting at with this? Like, I still am a homer for the old Ice Earth Legend, even though I know nobody plays that in that combination. Like, I don't know. And he doesn't really fit with Warrior of Light because he's ice, so that's like the first Brave card I thought of. So I love the art on this card, but I don't see how you're going to use this one.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I mean, my first reaction was this card sucks, which is not a good place to be.
Yeah.
I think this card needed the little EX symbol in the top right corner. They just kind of forgot to put it there. I feel like a 5 CP forward that searches something without a burst just is not going to see play in the year of our Lord 2024.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I will say that I thought about a little bit more that's kind of interesting, and I don't know how difficult this is to do. There's the Opus 16 wall that says the forwards of cost or characters cost 5 or more can't be chosen by opponent summons or abilities. If you could give that guy Brave, then Nimbus would say he can't be chosen by abilities, and he would say Nimbus can't be chosen by summons or abilities. You kind of create a targeting wall. That could be really potent. But you got to find a way to give Wall Brave.
Yeah.
Which is hard. There's a couple ways of doing it with like backups. The other thing you can do with this that's kind of interesting, there are a lot of backups that can give like 1,000 power and braveness.
Mm-hmm.
you can use that to with this to make something untargetable by abilities.
Yeah.
In response to being chosen. That's kind of cool. I don't think I'm ever sleeving this card up, though.
Yeah. Break out your old Opus 5 Momodis. Yeah, give something brave on demand, and suddenly it can't be targeted.
Yeah, like, that's cool. Like, oh, I'm choosing your thing with my really expensive ability. Well, actually, it's brave, so you can't choose it because Nimbus said so.
Yeah, it doesn't fear you. It has too much courage.
Yeah.
Next, we have Flan. I'm always a sucker for a good Flan deck, even though they haven't been seen in a minute. I would assume if you're going in on this, you want to play all the old like 1-cost Flans that can search a Flan, discard, maybe even go in on the Earth package. Is that relevant for competitive play these days? No, I don't think so. I don't know why this is limited to your main phase either. Like, if I've got to go in all these Flans, let me do it on their turn. It still has to be a dull forward. Like, was that not restriction enough? So, cute card, fun art, but I don't think this will be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of like that it does something without doing something. I think that, like, there's the Undead Princess from a couple sets ago that, like, you can just remove from the game to give a forward, like, 2,000 power. I think, like, there's a lot of power in, like, self-milled decks that could play that card in theory. This can kind of do something similar.
Mm-hmm.
I do also like that it doesn't have to remove itself from the break zone, so even if you have 1 copy of this and 3 of, like, the discardy search Flan,
mm-hmm.
you could just remove those 3, and then this stays in the break zone for the next set of Flans you have.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cute. I don't know if that was a mistake, or, like, just the way they templated it. Like, it doesn't feel like it should be able to do that, but it does. It's pretty low impact outside of that. I don't think this card is amazing or a world beater, but being able to kind of generate a Zalera for free if you're playing Flans anyway is not. Yeah, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah. Next, we have our signature card for the set. This is Lightning with some absolutely gorgeous art from Miki Yamashita. I hope I said that correctly. And yeah, this effect is just kind of and it's on the worst possible name for Category 13, because I think there's some new spice you can do still using the old Light Lightning. I mean, Lightning is just like such a hotly contested name. If you are doing some ice version, I guess it's not terrible to have a card that just dulls occasionally, but you also could run the old snow, which then also dulls whenever you attack. So yeah, love the art. Of course, it'd be wonderful to pull one of these since it's a signature, but I don't know. I don't really see much with this card. Do you?
I mean, the name is really unfortunate. In title, this card is absurd.
Oh yeah,
I'll lead with that. I do think there's a non-zero chance with all of the 13 support this set that maybe you just don't need to play a Lightning. You could play this instead and use this. Maybe Hope and Sarah enable this like different type of aggro deck, and instead of Lightning giving you card advantage and damage, the inevitability of your best blocker doesn't get to work each turn could actually matter. The other thing that I've heard about with this that is actually potentially relevant is Amadar is a card that exists.
Yeah.
You now have a second Earth Ice backup engine that isn't Rydia. I don't think it's as good as Rydia, clearly. I mean, Rydia searching Unileska and Mistdragon, I think, is just going to be a staple until the game dies. I can't imagine a better backup with Earth and Ice than that. But a second engine, one of which has an EX burst, and in theory, I'm sure there's got to be a playable snow somewhere. I think that's what Amadar also does. It's snow. It's like lightning, lightning, snow.
Yeah, I think so.
So, I mean, if they ever print like a decent like snow, I mean, in theory, you could get a snow backup with that as well. The attack on Dull is so far past its prime that I don't think that card will ever see the inside of a sleeve again. But no, I mean, the name is really bad, and I don't see it really taking off. But I don't think it's a card that won't see the inside of sleeves.
Yeah. Well, fair. Well, let's wrap Ice up with Lady Lilith, who, despite the fact that I enjoy the way she's looking at me, honey, I just can't afford 3 crystals. I don't want to pay 1 crystal. I don't want to pay 2 crystals. You want me to pay 3 crystals? Obviously a great effect, stealing a Warrior of Light, but like we have Chaos Arc right now. Chaos already does that and doesn't require you to go in on this crystal package. So I like the idea, I do, but I mean, and I'm a crystal hater, so call me biased, but I don't want to pay. I don't want to make 3 crystals, let alone then use them for this effect. What do you think?
It's clearly very powerful. I mean, unlike Chaos Arc, your opponent can give you the worst forward they have.
Yeah.
This is no. I don't want your Leo. Give me that Warrior of Light. Give me that Refia. Give me that, whatever the best. Give me that Une, right? I'm not asking. I'm taking. However, 3 crystals is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my least favorite legends of all time was that Opus 16 Cloud of Darkness that was like 2 crystals to remove a forward from the game forever. And while Cloud of Darkness was on the field, they couldn't cast another copy of that card. Really neat concept and effect. Completely unplayable card. This is a step beyond that, but it's better than that. Like, taking control of the forward is better than removing it from the game.
True.
Because they can't take it back, right? It's not like they kill the Lilith and they get the card back. Like, she's done her job at that point. I kind of wonder if instead of pay 3 crystals, choose the forward, gain control of it, if it was pay 4 crystals, but you get 1 for free on entry, if she would be better.
Yeah.
Because then, like, maybe he could be a 2CP generator crystal. And that's kind of the weird thing about crystals in general. I mean, there's a very clear analog in Magic with energy. But Magic has actually said that, like, the thing that energy does when it works well is every card that spends energy usually generates it as well.
Yeah.
And it's like you just have this like secondary pool of resources that just kind of grows over the course of the game as you cast cards with that. Crystals don't really work like that. There's like the cards that make crystals and the cards that spend crystals, but you have to find them in that order because the only cards that like generate crystals and use them are like Glaciella, which is why Glaciella sees so much play.
Yeah.
So I'm not sold on Lilith. I like the card. I like the concept. It's just 3 crystals. Ice is also the element that generates crystals and doesn't have a way to dump them either. You have stuff like the Wall Trail that just like sits there and makes a crystal every turn. Agrius, goodness knows Knights players generate crystals and have never touched them. With Lilith and Agrius attacking. Like, Knights could play this as like a 1-up. Maybe you get to the point, it's like, as the late game finisher, I've attacked twice with an Agrius and played a Lilith to the field. I can now play Lady Lilith, take the best forward and win the game. Maybe. I don't think I would do that if I was on Knights, but you can do it.
Yeah. Well, I know Ice has left me in the cold this set, so let's move on to something that blows here and to and fro a few more times. This is Wind. This is Asura with some absolutely gorgeous art, but Asura, my dear, the Wind Summon Club is a very exclusive club. You must be yay tall to enter that club with summons like the Opus 2 Asura, which is just never going to go out of style, Chocobo, Dryad. Like, you have to do something pretty insane to break into the Wind Summon Club, and I don't think this card does that. Go ahead.
I mean, I love the cost. 1 CP for this effect. I mean, I mentioned last set it was kind of weird that Miwa existed and like activated all of your forwards for cheaper than any summon could do that. Like, no summons activate all of your forwards for 2. Now 1 does.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of neat. Both of these effects are interesting. I think that like bounce and power reduction though are just kind of narrow. It hates on water and like not a lot else.
Yeah, it's
like
thematic because Leviathan is like king of the summons in 4 and she's the queen. So it seems like it was tied to like, oh, it hates on Leviathan, but like that's so specific.
Yeah, I mean, activate all the forwards you control is like strong. I just don't think it's strong enough to not be doing something else useful. Like, if it was like, activate all the forwards you control, draw a card, absolutely, slam dunk, throw it in every day.
Mm-hmm.
As it is, maybe you could play one of this in like a wind deck that isn't trying to cast a bunch of cards. Like, if there's a wind mid-range, I don't know, if there's like a wind water, like, Refia control, or like, I don't know. It's kind of cute that you can use this to activate Yuffie and then Yuffie special again in the same turn.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun, but yeah, I'm not really feeling this card, unfortunately. Outside of the art, which is incredible.
Yeah, art looks great. Well, it's appropriate you mentioned Yuffie because she's going to come up with our next card. This is our Legend Adele. I was always a huge fan of the Opus 5 Adele. This one, other than the art, it's crazy to have a win card that says activate everything on your board, and I'm like, eh. So it's kind of like, to me, a weird hybrid of Yuffie and Atomos. Atomos can do this on damage 3, and again, it can kind of protect itself by being a monster till then, give you all your backups up. And Yuffie can give you all your forwards. And yes, this is cheaper, but also it only works if she's attacking, and then she hurts herself by not allowing you to do it again. Whereas Yuffie says, hey, I'm threatening this insane special. I'm already getting them all up. I'm protecting myself. Like, in the face of a card like that, it's crazy to say that an effect that says activate your entire board doesn't seem strange, but I feel like Wind already has better ways to do that. I don't know. Am I crazy? Am I missing something with this card? I don't think this reads well.
I think it reads pretty decently. I mean, I think you're reading the card right. Activating all of your characters on a 3 CP forward that gets to do that potentially every turn, if you can find some way to activate Adele after she does it, is really powerful. Objectively, I don't think anybody would dispute that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fact you can't Amaterasu her is actually really funny, but also kind of relevant. That's not an auto ability that says that she doesn't do that. As weird as that is to say, like that's relevant. And I think a lot of Wind decks don't need the battle phase. You could theoretically do this, crash her. Okay, well she's going to run into the Warrior Blight and die. But I kind of now had a 3 CP card that activated all my characters. That's not terrible either. But I also look at this, and I see the 3 in the top left corner, and I think, well, I can't get it back with Azura. That really sucks. And then I think, well, I need to find Yuffie with her for her to really pop off. But I also think back to, like, I played Retainers for how many sets at this point?
Yeah.
And that Ignis from the starter deck, the Opus 18 starter, if he attacked, you felt like a god.
Yeah.
Like, and this is that Ignis with haste. Like, the dream of that card.
True.
I wish it didn't only activate Wind characters either, because then it's like, it's got to be in mono Wind. Like, if it was Earth Wind, maybe, okay, if she dies, I'll Kusith her back. That would be really nice. And then I was thinking more, it's like, well, combat timing does matter in Wind, because Zidane exists. I need to get my Zidane down before I go to combat with Adele now. Which then is just, it's putting more dependencies on a deck that already really doesn't want those dependencies to begin with. It just wants to do its thing. That's why the deck has gotten so streamlined and so simplified. It's like, no, we don't need a lot of these other cards. We need to just do our thing and win. And I don't know that Adele furthers that enough to be worth doing.
Yeah.
It's close. I'll try it out, but
I always like to be surprised, but yeah, I'm not don't have high hopes for her. Next we have Jorny, who, nothing wrong with this card. It's a princess, so it's searchable. Again, it's like Wind and Water already have... The game has become so searchable at this point. We've actually gotten to the point where you can be picky with the backups you're using for searching. It's no longer like, well, Nordstalin only has targets X, Y, and Z. Like, so you have other targets you can get that this works for. Now, it is a pretty generic effect. It's just any forward of cost 3 or less. You could protect a Refia with this. You could protect a Ferris with this. However, it is also, it's only abilities and it's damage. And something else the game has trended towards is non-damage based removal. There are a lot more straight breaks in the game. There are a lot of more tuck effects in the game. Back in Opus 11, there was like one card in the game that put a card into your deck, and that was Big Umaro. Now, there are so many of these. So, like, there are so many effects now that they don't even care. It's like, I'm not dealing you damage. I'm just getting you off the field. So, that just makes cards like these seem less and less relevant. At the same time, it's a 2-cost backup that can be searched. That's never bad, right?
I mean, I think the effect is actually like pretty decent too. I think that like the being able to buff up forward by 1,000, like making that Adele at 8K versus 7K is really relevant, and Adele will restand the Jorny right back up too. However, as you did allude to, being a Wind-Water princess is like the suffering from success area. You have Jorny, you have the other Jorny, which is a search for FFL forwards if that ever becomes relevant. There's Sarah Mobius, the one that does this for all of your forwards on the field. Gives you the like 1,000 power if you control 2 princesses. There's Princess Sarah. There's
other
Hilda
Princess
and Water.
Sarah.
There's Sarah. Yeah. Like, it really is like the suffering from success area. And to be fair, I think the Princess Sarah legend from 21 is kind of underplayed. Any princesses are kind of like specials for that card, right? And this is a good princess. It's a good card. I would play this unironically without that, but now we have another name for Princess Sarah to potentially discard. It's pretty decent still. I'm not gonna lie.
But will she see play? We'll have to find out. Next, we have something I certainly won't be playing. This is Vaughn. Again, it's just crystal. I just don't care about crystals, and so every crystal card I see is just like blah. I mean, clearly his special feeds into himself. That's cool. I appreciate that, but you're not playing this in Sky Pirates. Like, it's. I mean, if you're in on crystals, you'll like this card, but I don't like crystals, so I don't like it.
I don't think even if you're on the crystals, you'll like the card. It's really not. It's meant for kind of limited. It's kind of cool. I mean, the one thing I will say that they've fixed with Wind is actually looking okay in limited again for the first time in ages. Like the last two sets, Wind has been great in limited, even if the cards have not seen a ton of success. This Vaughn, you could probably draft. If you're drafting, you can get 5 or 6 of this guy, and if you just generate 2 crystals, he just cleaves the board and clears it for nothing in limited. Just really, really strong.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that's all he's going to do, though.
Next, we have some gorgeous... Oh, am I missing one? Hold on. Am I missing Vana? We should have Vana.
Yeah, we got Vana. Yep.
What the heck? Okay. It freaked out on me for a second. Sorry. All right, I'm going to reset. Next, we have Vana from Final Fantasy XIV. I do like the summon canceling effect. It's, you could argue it's a bit pricey at 3, plus you have to lose a backup for it. But if it's a crucial summon, you absolutely have to cancel. I think you'll be grateful to have it there. And then obviously its second effect currently is intended to go get the Light Legend. If they ever make more Vana in the future, it also will do that. You technically could replace itself with another copy of itself. I don't know why you would do that, but that is something you can do. Give them the old unexpected. Oh, they won't be expecting that one. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, the summon cancel is nice. Again, win backups are already so tight, and this one I don't think can be searched, unlike a lot of the others. So like, I don't think it's going to make the cut based on that. But if you are in on that light Vana and you have wind as one of your colors, then maybe you are going to try this so you can just fetch it out of the deck. What do you think?
So I actually like this card a lot. I mean, you're right, all the downsides of it. You can't search it by any means that I can think of. And it is expensive to cancel summon, but Wind can have a very big Amaterasu problem. Amaterasu on Rosa. There's no cost restriction on cancel a summon. You can cancel Arc, not irrelevant at the moment. Cancel a Mist Dragon's trying to stop you from resolving your Lulu. All of these are like really solid, nice things to do. As a kind of the floor of the card is when I have this up, my opponent can't really cast a summon because I can cancel it.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that second effect is pretty decent in Wind of all places because I think Wind is a place that could consider Venat. One of the very few decks that I think actually might be looking at that card and going, maybe I want this. Maybe this is decent. So I'm higher on this than I think a lot of people are. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's fair. Next, we have some gorgeous full art with this silver dragon. I love that scene from FF9. Nice to see 9 get so much love. And I don't know. On one hand, I'm kind of like, well, it kind of doesn't do anything. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, damn, this just like protects all of your monsters like from everything. But then I'm like, well, it's still then technically a 2CP forward, so and it's so there's so much 2CP hate in the game, Ixion, Cloud can get rid of this. So like if they really are worried about it, they'll just bop the dragon. So I'm leaning towards like it kind of just feels like it doesn't do a whole lot, but it's still a 2-cost 9k that does demand it be dealt with first, unless they just have like mass removal, which is really only Neo X death. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure what to think of this card.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's really funny that this stops them from being able to choose the ice one. Just like a really silly nombo. I will say, Wind having access to a 2CP 9k is not nothing.
True.
Wind struggles more than any other element with being punched in the face. And there's a world where you go, like, back up turn 1, every silver dragon, and now I have a 9k, just big bungus on the field that, okay, you can swing a Corilla through, sure, whatever. But that Laswell and that Gawain and that Garland, none of them can get through this guy. There's value in that. And that, that used to be a thing you would do against 13 a lot. Like, I would used to get, when I was, trying to, dig through the card pool, how do I stop 13 from killing me? How do I stop 13 from killing me?
Mm-hmm.
The card that came up and was really close to doing it, relatively consistently, was the starter RNA, the one that was 9k first strike. And the idea just was, you can attack all you want, she's going to sit there and block and kill the stuff as it attacks. I do think the body size, 2 CP 9K, that's huge.
Yeah.
You usually got to pay 5 for that. That could be the thing that really puts this card over the edge.
I love the name Big Bungus. I kind of wish it was called that. Big Bungus, a.k.a. Silver Dragon. Well, what about this next monster? This is Samovira. This one's just kind of just kind of like the Fire one to me. I'm especially surprised by the effects. Like, if it said draw a card or something, maybe I'd be more into it. But, like, we've had so many wind cards for ages that break forwards of high cost or more, or monster break. Like, Alexander the Summon does that. I don't know. This one just seems like needlessly complex for very basic effects in wind.
Yeah, and like a lot of most wind decks don't really want to get their monsters in the break zone. They don't really want to sacrifice. You don't want to sacrifice an Atomos or an like even like Ochu. Like, oh well, Ochu does its thing on entry. You know, you can go like Ochu and then this, and like you kind of like get to keep the CP, sacrifice both, kill a thing. But it's really good to Chocobo Ochu.
Yeah,
and like put it back in hand. The effects are fine. I mean, it does suck. You kind of 2-for-1 yourself if you break a monster with it. Like, you break 2 of your monsters to break one of your opponents. Your opponent's going to kind of laugh and say, oh, yeah, sure, dog.
Mm-hmm.
Go off. But, like, break a 5-cost forward is, like, it's not bad. I just, like... There's, like, this weird design angle with Wind right now where they seem to want you to put, like, 20 Wind characters on the field at the same time.
Yep.
Like... Clearly, that's like what's going on with like Adele and like Balthier and like all these cards. Like they just want Ace.
Yeah.
They want you to have all these characters, and this is a card that takes 2 of them off the field for maybe one of these conditions comes up in the opponent's deck.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not feeling this one.
Yeah, I mean, against a Warrior of Light deck, this doesn't even have a target. Like other than like maybe Une, it doesn't hit any of the Warriors of Light. They don't play monsters, so.
Or like Une and Arc, like, okay, cool, break my Arc.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, see how I feel about it.
There's the Soldier Candidate. I have nothing to say. Do you?
No.
Yep. Next, we have Tyro. Somehow, Tyro coming out 12 sets before his previous set, and with hero rarity, is worse than old Tyro. Granted, old Tyro was like a king among men, so like if you can get his effect, a 2-cost backup that essentially pays for itself is very good. They still rate the kind of, if you're paying 4, that's when you can get the recursion effect, or maybe 3 if you're a tribal or a job. So if you can get it, that's very good. However, you have to have exactly 3 different elements among backups you control, which means he has to be most likely your 4th backup. It means Shantoto disqualifies it because she counts as all of them.
He can be your 3rd.
He can be your 3rd. You're correct, yeah. So, but he can't be like, if you pull him turn 1, you're not getting that. And then he can break himself for an effect that, again, is okay, except, again, they have been moving more and more away from damage-based removal. So, I mean, he's fine, but he's a 2-cost win backup that has a bunch of restrictions, and there's also, as we mentioned earlier, a bunch of other 2-cost win backups that are just like, no, just play me, it's fine. So I would be surprised to see Tyro pop up.
The funniest thing about this card is I was trying to evaluate, and I'm like, okay, I'm in Wind. I'm in, say, like, Earth Wind. Okay, I can play 1 extra backup, so maybe I go, like, Nordstalin for my Wind backup. So Nordstalin can get a Uke, and then I'll play Tyro, so I'm color fixed, and then I'll play my Tyro. Oh, wait. I have 2 Tyros now. Like, a lot of the ways to get the 3 elements on your backups is using Tyro to help color fix the 3rd backup into play. Which this stops you from doing. And I was like, well, okay, maybe I can go for Kimari, and then I realized, well, Kimari, if my opponent has 2 elements, disqualifies this if one of those elements isn't Wind. Because then he's going to have 3 elements, or 4 elements. And I'm like, I don't think you... It's like, what's the... I mean, Cosmos? Like, Cosmos in a... Like, Wind X? Like, maybe, but, like, you can't search Cosmos. Has been the issue with Cosmos for ages, right?
Right.
Is, like, getting Cosmos to the field. She's great when she's there. She's awful if you can't find her.
Yeah.
And the payoff is just Kusen.
Yeah.
It's not even like Shinryu. Like, search your deck for any card or any character. It's get back a card, which is powerful. Like, Wind has never had access to this. But wind is the one that like needs actions, not wind with 2 other elements, one of which is probably earth because you need to color fix the other 2 elements. So maybe there's something here with like the class movables to like color fix the second color in. You can go like fire, wind, water, and use the water moval to get the fire back up into play, and then play this. But the payoff is not here for. This is a lot of hoops for a card that draws you a card.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a reason he's looking up, because like the rest of us, he's looking up to the true star of this kind of little color combo. And that's Dr. Mog, which is not only adorable artwork, is just a much easier and universal effect to get on. There's no, well, Mog enters the field if you control 8 Moogles. No, he just says search for a job Moogle or card name Moogle. There are Moogles in every element in this game, and the very prominent one in Wind, which is what people call the Google Moogle, the 11 searcher. So you can pretty much jam this in Wind X anything. You could jam him turn 1. Oops, didn't see my backups. No problem. I've got Dr. Mog. He's going to go get him for me. And then he can activate them. So you could Google Moogle twice in 1 turn. Any other Moogles that have effects, like I know there's No-Nos that have a bunch of effects. Like, yeah, it's very funny to see these back-to-back sharing the same art. And Tyro is so specific and like complicated, and Mog is so universal. Like, nah, just do whatever you want. This card's obviously very good.
You're underselling it.
I thought I was boosting it up.
No, it's even better than that. I mean, you mentioned every Moogle. This gets the class Moogles. So you can, say you're in Wind Fire, but you want to splash 1 fire card, like Amaterasu. This gets you Wind Water. Now this gets you the Water Moogle guaranteed for that. Even more so than that, though, you mentioned Google Moogle, Stiltskin, obviously 2 Moogles will see a lot of play. This also just, once you play it, it's kind of a backup.
Yeah.
I mean, the Magic comparison is a card like Birds of Paradise, which is a forward, it's a creature or forward that taps to generate mana or CP. This kind of does an approximation of that.
Yeah.
Like if you play this off of a Moogle backup and it sits there for a turn, it can tap to generate CP for you going forward. We haven't really had I can't think of a single forward that does this in the same way on like a 1 CP forward with a not once per turn ability to activate a backup.
Yeah, no, I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Then we talk about cards like Adele, right? Like, oh yeah, Adele, activates all the Wind characters. Well, when you start activating Dr. Mog, he gets to do it again. He's like, oh, I'm active. Here's another, activation of that ability, which is like really why Adele, I'm like, maybe Adele does have a home because this card and Yuffie are so good at activating this. This guy can generate you so much CP over the course of a turn, potentially, as a forward. That there just aren't forwards that generate CP advantage in this way. It's so cool. It's a really strong card.
He's putting his doctorate to good use. But it's not such a strong card is this Ninja backup. I mean, it's probably one of the worst of these. I don't really have anything to say about it. Do you?
Maybe it helps you close the game out. I just can't imagine you go out of your way for this effect.
Yeah. Next, we have Noel, who for being basically a big beater, I'm a lot higher on than I usually am for cards like this, especially compared to a card like Vincent we'll talk to later. Like, it's so easy to warp him for 1 and then have him immediately come into play. And I think with a card like Light Lightning, like, that other Noel was subject to interaction before he got his power boost. This is a 9k haste first strike. Like, he's going to be harder to interact with. And now, you don't ever want to pay 5 for this. Like, you don't want to pay 5 for a card that's just a beat stick like this. But again, you can, if you're playing a 13 deck, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to pay 1, go to combat, boom, he's coming in. So for what he does, and I am actually excited to see if that deck's going to be any good. I actually like this card quite a bit, and the art is great as well.
Yeah, it's a very shocking card. Like, it works for characters. I think the Shadow from 21 had to have exactly category 6 forwards.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I think the Shadow is obviously a stronger card. Being able to kind of mulligan into 2 fresh cards is better than just, I'm beat stick,
yeah.
Herder. Again, a first strike 9k is actually, like, really obnoxious. It's very difficult to block. You could very easily go, like, was it Nora, Hope? You need 1 more category 13 character and Nola's live?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just feels like a really low bar to clear to make him a 1 CP 9K.
To compare him to the Shadow too, the Shadow came in during the end phase. What I like about this is it kind of eliminates one of the problems of Warp, is that you just can't afford to wait that long. And this says, no, you're not waiting. I'm here, go, let's go.
Now, the other downside to this card that I can think of is this is a Wind Warp card that doesn't play nice with Vayne.
True.
Because you probably want to play this guy and get him in the same turn. I think if you wait a turn for this guy, he's worse Estinian. I already am not a big fan of Estinian.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to have the 3 characters, which means that you're never going to get the value off of Vayne unless you, like, play Vayne after after you warp Null, play Vayne, and then have Null come in, but then you're kind of wasting the Vayne at that point. And Vayne's just kind of, like, up there with, like, the most powerful cards that just don't have a way to play the game. So... But yeah, no. Not my kind of card. I don't like the big Bungus Beat Sticks decks like very much. In 13, I don't really know what they want us to do with this deck now is the other question. Like, are we supposed to play Wind in 13 now after, like, Fire Lightning and Fire Ice and all those cards were in the starter deck? Like, are we supposed to try to find ways to play Wind in that deck now? I don't want to play Wind in my 13 deck unless... We'll get to the other, like, reason they're trying to make that happen next, but it's just a weird thing they tried doing here.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where it's going to go. And you know what they say, where there's Null, there's hope. And here's our big hope. This is essentially the reason to be playing a Wind version of 13. So I'll just be honest, I don't really know what to think of this card, because similar cards to it, like Angeal from last set, these cards that you have to pay to get them on the field, then they want you to pay X as well to get even more out of him. Now, the nice thing about Hope is that assuming he can survive, he can kind of keep funding you into it, whereas the Angeal is kind of a one and done. Hope also has a lot of targets he can pick. He can get backups. He can get monsters if there's a lot, and there are quite a few 13 monsters. I'm not really sure what the ideal target for him is. I don't know if this is a card you want to curve into. I don't know if it's one you just jam out, pay whatever, maybe 2 just to get a 2 CP backup, and then hope. Like, it's maybe it would have been too busted, but like, it's almost kind of a shame you can't do him on your opponent's turn and then have him immediately come in on your turn. You have to do it on your turn, which means you have to wait a whole phase before he re-enters again. So yeah, I don't know what to think of this card. The ceiling is clearly very, very high, but he also is expensive and slow to a degree for his action effect. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, this is just such a weird one for me. My initial reaction was, I actually like the hope from, I think it was last set, that like just 2 CP enter, reveal 5 out of 13 card from on your hand.
Mm-hmm.
I think that card is actually really underplayed. I know that like reveal 5 is the cursed mechanic and blah 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 blah. You can play 13 characters in 13 deck. That's not difficult to do. It's going to hit almost every time. So for this to be good, I feel like I have to get this to resolve twice. Like, I know that like, oh well, searching is better than reveal 5, but I don't want to search the extra 1 to search as opposed to reveal 5. Is that really that much worth it? Especially on a 4 that effectively can't attack.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way you ever attack with this guy unless you can give him Brave or something that I'm not aware of. There is the magical Christmas Land scenario, which is very funny to think about.
Hit me with it.
You go, turn 1, you go Hope for his mom, Nora. I think it's his mom's name, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to your next turn, you warp the Hope out of the play. You play the other Hope. You pay for that Hope with the entry effect. Then you go to the next turn. It causes a stack when he returns to the field, so you warp the other Hope out of the game. The other one comes back in, and you just start cycling the 2 Hopes over and over again, and you get one at the start of every single turn.
That's
this
pretty
falls
fun.
apart to any single disruption whatsoever. It's like why I don't like, but like without having 2 of these going at the same time, is it really even that good? So like every other turn, you get to maybe sort of search for a 13 character if you're willing to play it that turn immediately.
Yeah.
Like the timing restriction is just annoying on this thing. But there is some fun stuff you can do. Maybe you play Mono Wind with this and you cheat in Yagrosh with it. And that gets you a backup that Ice now has to target for the rest of the game. And he's done his job. He can just do whatever now. Maybe he can warp out and get a type in for you later, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. And like you said, the fact you have to pay on entry, none of these cards have been good.
Yeah, they have.
Or that good. Like, I'm trying to think, like, what do we have? We've had the Angeal, who I think is like close to playable, but not amazing. It's so expensive because like you're probably paying 5 or 7 for him, and if you could just hold the card in hand and do it on a later turn, it would just feel so much better, right?
Yeah.
You could just hold the cloud in hand. So then, like, going back, we have
Mont Blanc and
there's
Hurdy.
a youth Mont Blanc and Hurdy, which is fine, but definitely like not my favorite fire ice backup.
Yeah.
There's the Emmett Selk starter.
Mm-hmm.
That like plays an ice backup, which kind of led to some fun stuff for like I'm playing 2 backups in my deck. I'm playing Lock and Chaos and nothing else. But like that's the only scenario that card ever saw play. There's the Yuffie starter that searches for a red 13 that theoretically can get you a fire backup right now in Wind if you wanted to.
Yeah.
With a name that matters, like I want to play Yuffies in my deck that needs Yuffies for specials. Maybe I could play a red 13 to the field. So like, this effect has never been good. It's never been good.
Yeah.
Like there's never been a slam dunk. I want to see this in my hand every single time, except for Mont Blanc Hurdy. You're right; it's probably the closest. But even that, they put the extra restriction on Mont Blanc that you have to find an ice card to play the Hurdy from deck, so it doesn't cheat the color, which is like why these cards can be good. So no, I don't love this card at all. I really think this card is kind of If you only get the one play on it, we're not playing Pain in our decks right now. That like searches for a Riku or a Yuna. Like those are good card names with a burst. Do I really want this that much more than I want a Riku to my field or a Pain? A Yuffie or not Yuffie, a Yuna. Like, how many 3CP forward EX searchers are there that don't see play in Wind right now?
Yeah.
With a burst. Like, the burst is huge. You don't have to, like, oh, no, I gotta scramble to find the CP to pay this now. The loan shark's gonna come after me if I don't pay for it immediately.
The loan sharks.
So, I don't know. I'm just not feeling this card in the same way. Like, it's gotta be repeatable, and I don't think he's gonna live long enough, because you're gonna die in 3 turns if you're playing Wind anyway. If they see the green cards come out, they're like, you're dead. I got you.
The gods of Cocoon have abandoned me. Now there is no hope, but maybe there is hope for ninjas, because next we have Mana, which is one of the best cards Ninjas has gotten since it's come out, and it has the effect it is needed for so long to support that old Opus 11 edge. He was just too fragile of a card, he just died to everything. Well, finally they have some protection for it, and it's on EX Burst, and it searches. Card is great for ninjas. Except it's called Mana, which was their best backup searcher already. Why? I mean, like, you really do need the protection effect, but like, can you give up it's still a forward that can be interacted with, like, so is that worth giving up the backup? I don't know. Amethyst Row, you can tell me if you're watching this what your better version of ninjas is, because I absolutely adore this action ability, and that category, that tribal really needed that, but it's just why does it have to conflict with it? So how do you see her?
They could have named this Izayoi.
Right?
Like, the thing is, like, the Mina backup is such an important card for ninjas. Like, it's so important. Like, the whole thing you do in that deck is I go Edge, then I go Mana for 2. Mana then gets me Yugiri. Yugiri gets me another ninja. I play that ninja for 1 next turn because of Edge. Like, that's what the deck does. Like, this would be so good if it had any other name, because then you would go Edge for Mana. If they don't kill the Mana, then you play, we'll call this Izayoi, and then Izayoi then searches for a backup that you play on curve. Like, how much better is that than what this is? And there's so many fun things you can do with that action ability. Like, you can dole 2 of them, or you attack with Yuffie, dole 2, and then, like, you get this ability for free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so close. There is some fun stuff you can do where you go, like, Yugiri, Mana, Yuffie, the new one, and you kind of do, you pretend you're 13, but that's not good in 13 right now.
Yeah.
Like, 13 isn't doing that. So why would ninjas want to do that all of a sudden? So I like the card, why this name?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, another card you'll be asking why about is Medion. This is the antagonist from Final Fantasy XIV. I think it's, we've got a new expansion out. I don't think that's spoilers at this point. So if this effect didn't have the restriction on it, would you play it? Because I don't know if even I'd play this, because yes, it activates all your backups, but it's purposely losing you a backup, so the most you're getting is 4. Draw a card is obviously very good. Like, I don't know if I would play it with the restriction. So when you add on the restriction that you can only use it if no one has forwards, why? Like, I don't really understand what the idea is. That just a flavor thing? Like, I don't really get that. So, like I said, so as I turn it over to you, would you play it if it didn't have that forward restriction?
I will say it's a lore thing. Like, is why. Like, it's pretty cool lore. Actually, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but. It's a lore thing. I mean, there's not a lot of 2CP backups that generate 4 or 6 CP with a single action ability like
True.
This, right? Like that's inherently really powerful. Now the question is, how the hell do you do this? Like, what's the situation that you have 4 backups or 4 other backups on the field and neither player has any forwards? The best one that I've heard is like you have 4 backups including this. You Shantoto, leaving Metaion open. Neither player now has forwards. You just Shantoto. Now you crack the Metaion, activate your backup, draw a card, and you get to play after the Shantoto. That's like pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah, that's the best use for it.
It's very specific, like the use case there. But I mean, there are situations where, like, and 2CP backup. I mean, it's also not searchable. Is the other problem. If it was searchable, maybe you could run this at 1. Like, okay, I know this is a game where like I'm in a Shantoto or something like that, but. Yeah, it's really cool flavor and really cool lore. I don't think the card is super playable, though.
Yeah. Well, what about Mana 2.0 Electric Boogaloo? This is Yuffie, and again, this is an effect ninjas absolutely wants, because ninjas didn't really have any way to generate card advantage. It was all just very like offensive capabilities. And so this Yuffie creates great card advantage, and she even feeds into herself, which I've always liked this kind of card design, that she says, hey, no one else can get through, don't worry, I'll just sneak under there and draw a card. Unfortunately, it's called Yuffie. Now, the good news is this isn't as bad as the Mana, because it doesn't conflict with the backup, and the Yuffie it conflicts with has an insane special ability, so this one isn't as dead because you can feed into that special ability, and I think it's actually somewhat safe to put this one out because your opponent doesn't really want you to keep drawing cards, so they probably will get rid of this. I still hate the name clash, and I have heard some arguments that maybe the other 2-cost Yuffie, the one that like does 8k when it attacks, is still maybe a better choice than this, because again, you ultimately really want the 5-cost on the field regardless, but not as detrimental as Mana. But man, if only this was a unique ninja name, that clan would be eating well.
Yeah, I mean, the card is objectively actually really interesting and really powerful. I've seen a lot of people like trying to brew with this over playing the 5-cost Yuffie even, like entirely, or play 3 of each and just say, well, I'll play the one I draw. The question really is, like, you know, how often is this going to come up? I know that like you're like, well, you can use this as the 4th Yuffie with the thing. I actually am one of the, I'm bigger on the removal. Like, there's a couple schools of thoughts on Yuffie. If you're on Stealth Skin, you always play the Opus 1 because it costs 1. You can search it, get it into the bin, never worry about it the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not on Stealth Skin, then you need to find whatever Yuffie you could probably want to reserve. You probably need to cost 2 or less and get it back with Azura. What's the best one? And now there's 2 interesting options. There's this one, which kind of can generate card advantage if she sticks. And then there's the one from Opus 20, I think it was, where it's like, you put 2 Shuriken counters on her. When she attacks, you can remove a Shuriken counter to do 8k to something. 2CP doing 8k is actually really obnoxious. I think your opponent has to kill her in the same way that your opponent has to probably stop you from drawing cards with this one.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that like if I'm like emergency casting a Yuffie, I probably think I need the removal more than I need the ability to draw a card next turn.
Yeah.
Especially given that like this isn't guaranteed to draw. The Yuffie that you play that like does the ping will always do the ping. This one only draws you a card if you're willing to either cycle a card by discarding a win card to draw one, or if your opponent lets you draw it. So I think giving your opponent the option is just outright worse. But this could be like the kingpin of a new ninja deck potentially, which is cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's fair. Next, we have a card that's complete. Oh, well, there's the Dragoon Crystal backup. We'll go past that. Here's what I was meaning to talk about. This is Luso backup, which is interesting because it doesn't have any restrictions on it. It's just a character of cost 2 or less, played to the break zone. It's completely unplayable in mono win because it conflicts with the forward Luso that you absolutely have to run. And so if you're not using it in mono wind, where are you using it? Wind also has the nice Chocobo Sam into Fat Chocobo into Chocolate. I mean, again, like there's clearly plenty of applications for this, right? There are so many 2-cost characters in the game that includes forwards, backups, monsters. I don't know. I mean, it can't go in any cast decks. Can't be Ice Wind, can't be Earth Wind because you need forward Luso in those decks. So I don't know. There's nothing. I guess the confusing part about this card to me is there's nothing that jumps out like, oh my gosh, finally now with Luso I can do X into X. It's not bad, clearly, and then it has an on-break effect if you need it, but nothing jumps out to me by this is the play. What do you see for this card?
I mean, I'm a little higher on it. I mean, obviously, this can't go in any deck that's playing Luso 17. That's just a given. But in other situations, I mean, if you discard the card you want to play, this is effectively Edgar, which is one of the best cards in the game right now as a backup, right?
True.
You just, instead of playing it from hand, it plays it from the break zone, right? There's a lot of like kind of interesting-ish stuff you can do with that. I think like the Wall Legend for Opus 16 is a card I always go back to as a card that like right now you can play Tyro, you can play Minfilia. Now you can play Luso. Well, that's 3 backups. Now that wall only costs you 2 to play. Or if the wall's in play and you cast this, you draw a card now on top of that. There's like a lot of like very sneaky things this card can do. I wish the break effect was a little bit better. Maybe maybe they just did the Edgar thing and let you repeat the play a character thing again. Like that would be really, really nice because then you could play this in mono and you can crack Luso to play Luso.
Yeah, should be funny.
Should actually be like pretty good. But I mean, I also like them just randomly tacking incidental. Choose a monster, break it on a card. We need more of this. We need a lot more of this. So no, I think the card is it's not an all-star, but once you get past the name, it's playable.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if you feel that way about Mr. General Leo. Unfortunately, it doesn't really go in the 6 deck, because there's just not a... I guess he could technically play a 2-cost backup, but you don't really have a way to generate win CP. Yeah, we're at a weird spot in Final Fantasy TCG that there are so many cards coming out now, Luso, Edgar, look at this General Leo, that say, play a character of 2 or less for free, whether it's from the breaks on your hand, and... they get me less and less excited, maybe because the effect has become more prevalent, but also the game has just gotten so efficient, and cards are now so cheap and so free, the really good ones, the ones that are at the top of the meta, that, yeah, a card like this is like, oh, okay, yeah, it's another, like, play. I mean, do you play this in mono wind? I guess it would get you a backup out early. Technically, you could maybe splash Firewind Zidane in there now, and then he could cheat out Firewind Zidane, but that, of course, conflicts with the steal your cards like Mill Zidane, so... this is another one of those cards that, like, he's nothing reads wrong on him. He's a captain, if that ever matters. But I'm also just like, I don't know. Where do I put this? What kind of deck do I use this on? What do you see for Mr. Leo here?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this card doesn't read poorly. But, again, it kind of reads a lot to me like having Pain Syndrome of, like, a card that, like, it doesn't have a bad effect. Generates 2 CP on entry, But, I mean, I read the effect of, like, the bonus effect on it beyond, like, the play a character costs 2 or less. I don't really know what you want to cheat in. Zidane's, like, the one that most people say, but, like, if you're in wind, you could just cast Zidane.
Yeah.
But, like, 2,000 power, okay, so it's a 3 CP 9k. We're not excited for Weiss, which is a 3 CP 9k with other upside.
Yeah.
And can't be chosen by summons. Being chosen untargetable by summons is the least relevant thing to be untargetable by, because not everything's playing summons anyway. Oh no, they can't Bahamut this. I guess they'll just have to Refia it away. So, I don't know. It's like it just feels like it's the worst of every one of these things. And what's Leo have against summons anyway?
Yeah, I like, is it because he fought the Espers in FF6? But he didn't. He was actually on the side of the Espers? Yeah, I think that's a flavor fail. I don't get that at all.
But, yeah, I mean, it's like it's not a bad card. It's just, and like again, this kind of fits in that like maybe this is in the mold of Wind is supposed to just build 30 characters on their side of the field over the course of the game, and he gets to do himself and another character. Now your Ace cleaves for 2k more, and your Balthier pings twice when he enters now when Leo comes into play, and also this is a big body now. And then you cry when you get Shantoto LB and lose all of the 20 characters that are on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like not terrible. It just doesn't read like a hero to me. It reads like a rare.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It is. It's crazy. It's a hero. Well, folks, that's going to do it for Wind and our first 3 elements in this set review. Don't go anywhere. Look for the next videos here on the channel. I'll put the boxes to them once they are live here on the video. Ghoul, thank you for joining me. And, folks, we will be back shortly with Earth, Lightning, and Water. Until then, take care.